And 11.2 is a verbal update on repairs to the Claremont Access. Oh,
sorry, Madam Chair. I'm going to have Brian Hughes, who's our Manager of Capital Technical Services for Operations, provide the overview as it's his staff performing the works.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For a quick summary, basically I'll just run through the steps where we are right now. The Claremont Access downbound lanes, they remain closed to traffic. The upbound lanes are open and will remain open during the bin wall removal and the rock scaling operation that's going to go on. Rock anchors have been installed by our contractor in solid rock above the bin walls, and cables have been connected from that solid rock down to the upper bin wall columns. Our contractor has previously gone through the area above the bin walls and has scaled, removed any of the loose rock up there. And measures are now being put in place, or have been put in place already, to protect the upbound traffic on the Claremont. And we need to have that protection in place while they're removing the bin walls and while they're doing the scaling work. And that involves installing concrete block walls. The contractor has a crane on site, so we need to protect the crane, and we have a fence installed to trap any loose rock that would be coming down. So the bin walls will start to be removed this week. They should be starting it today. Everything is in place. They should start coming down. The panels will be removed in sections. We're going to remove them in a controlled manner, piece by piece. We'll take them down, and as we're taking them down, they'll be dealing with the loose material that's coming behind the panels. There are 19 panels to be removed, and that's between the 2012 failure area and the recent failure area that occurred at the east limit of the upper bin walls. Total length is approximately 55 metres. Total length that's being removed, including the piece that was removed in December of 2016, is about 80 metres. Total length from the 2012 failure was 24 metres. When we start removing the upper bin wall, the condition of the lower bin just below it will be reviewed, and we will be checking as we go along, as the material is coming down. If any of those areas need to be removed, we'll continue to remove those as well. If we can leave them in place, we certainly will do that. The remaining upper bin wall to the west of the 2012 failure, we have been looking at that, and we're not going to be removing that at this time. There's no apparent immediate risk with that bin wall. We have, in addition, we've added anchors to the rock above that, the solid rock above that area, and we've run some cables down to the bin wall columns just to provide some added protection. The outcome of that bin wall will be dealt with as part of the long-term strategy. The steel that's been removed from all of this, steel panels, steel columns, that will be salvaged and collected and processed under the city's corporate scrap metal contract. And once the bin wall is removed and the rock material is taken away, we will be installing a traffic protection barrier running along the edge of the road. That will be in addition to the concrete jersey barrier that's there right now. We want to put that in place just to add some additional protection in case, now that we'll have the bin wall removed, we have a possibility of some additional rock material moving as we go through some freeze-thaw cycles, so we could have additional rock slides, and this would provide some additional traffic for protection for traffic on the downbound lanes. So once that barrier is in place, the work is cleaned up, we're planning to open the downbound lanes of the Claremont Access, and the opening of the downbound lanes is planned to occur before the end of February. The cost of the work, the total cost to date, is estimated at $1.1 million. And that's as a breakdown of that, the work that was done up to the end of December included the removal of the failed bin wall at the east end and the installation of rock anchors. That cost approximately $350,000. The upcoming work, which includes the actual removal of the 55-metre piece of bin wall and the installation of the protective barrier, that's $750,000. Now, our contractor is proceeding with this work, and we are funding that through the 2017 escarpment stabilization program. That funding, there's not enough in that funding to cover the entire work. That work, we will require some additional funding, and there will be a follow-up request for funding to be taken from a roads reserve. Madam Chair, that's a quick summary of where we're at right now.
Thank you, Brian. Questions? Councillor Ferguson?
Two questions. First of all, you said the $1.1 million was cost incurred to date, and it's $800,000 to do the balance. Did I hear that correctly?
True, Madam Chair. No, the cost to date was $350,000. Up to the end of December was $350,000. That involved the removal of the portion of the bin wall that we had identified as failed. That was from the time we had the closure at the end of November. So 350 plus the additional amount is 750,000 for the removal.
So total is 1.1.
Total is 1.1.
Okay. And you're saying it's being funded by the a reserve fund we have for the escarpment walls. How much is in that reserve?
Madam
Betty?
Chair, if I could, and we have Joe Speiler here to assist us with that as well. My understanding is with the interest from 2016, it will be $2.3 million.
In the reserve?
Yes.
So there is adequate to cover this cost then?
Yes.
Because I heard previously there wasn't enough money in the fund to cover the cost, but now there is.
If I could. So I think what Brian was making reference to is that to date we've been using the 2017 escarpment stabilization funding that's annually approved in the capital budget. That is insufficient to complete the Claremont works. And actually by fully funding the Claremont, because we have three areas that we were intending to target this year with the money that had been approved under that slope stabilization. So we'd like to see that money returned so we can continue to do the work we had in addition to the Claremont failure.
Okay, so $2.2 million in the reserve fund for mountain accesses for stabilization. What was the amount that was in the capital budget for doing?
The amount we had approved in the capital budget for 2017 was $450,000.
Okay, so if the 1.1 million, then you need $650,000 then out of the reserve. Is that correct?
No, what we'll be asking for is the 1.1 because we'll be basically returning the money that we've been borrowing to date out of the slope stabilization. So the money that will be asked for out of the reserve will be the 1.1.
But you
and
had,
Joe's here to help us with that as well.
but you did have $450,000 in the capital budget to do that work this year, and you have a further $2.2 million in the reserve fund for this type of work.
The $450,000, sorry, Madam Chair, through you, the $450,000 that was in the budget was not specifically allocated to Claremont. In fact, we have three other locations that we have work to do relative to the rock scaling, which the operations group does do. No, the $450,000 was not intended for Claremont, and we'd like to see that money still remain for 2017 so that we can continue on with our work plan as originally scheduled.
And what's the purpose of the $2.2 million that's in the reserve fund for stabilization?
It's a general roads stabilization. And Joe, I'm going to ask you to assist me with that if you wouldn't mind.
Mr. Speiler?
Oh, there we go. Okay, so the reserve is called the Roads, Bridges, and Traffic Capital Reserve. And as Betty had indicated, there's approximately $2.2 million in that.
So where are you going to suggest, Joe, the 1.1 million come from?
I was going to suggest the 1.1 million needed still to finish off the Claremont and then to top up the 2017 capital budget of $450,000.
Well, but the $1.1 million does all the Claremont work, and so then you got to refund them. But I guess when you take that $1.1 million, you get a new source of that. 450 will go back to replenish the 2017 capital. So where's the 1.1 million going to come from? Where are you going to recommend that come from?
From the Roads, Bridges, and Traffic Capital Reserve.
That's one that has 2.2 million in it?
Correct.
Okay. I don't think I heard Betty say that. I'd heard you say that you don't want to take the money out of the $2.2 million. Have I got that wrong?
Sorry, Joe is correct. You did, if I've misrepresented it. No, I'm asking that the 1.1 million, I'm supportive of the $1.1 million come out of that reserve.
So this technical question, probably back to Brian, then you said the bin walls are being removed, you're going to scale the rock face, get back to solid rock again, then you're going to put just an additional wall across the bottom, so we're not putting back up new bin walls then?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. We're not putting the bin walls back up. We are going to have an exposed rock slope once the bin panels are removed.
Okay, will you be shocked?
That's not in the plan right now. The overall Claremont Access is being studied by engineering at the moment, and there will be, I understand there will be a report back to you in, I think it's scheduled for April of this year, that will identify the short, medium and long-term strategies for dealing with the bin walls.
The Jersey barrier, you say, is going to be enhanced by a further wall to protect the public from rocks that could fall down then. Is that very similar to that very extensive, I would call it a fence when you come down the 403 that the MTO has in place? Is that the same thing you're putting in?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's an option. We're trying to finalise the details right now. We have a couple of different options. We have the concrete blocks that are being installed by the contractor to protect the area around the crane and to protect the locations on the bin wall that he's working on. We're looking at an option to maybe leaving them in place, putting another fence on top of those, and that would satisfy our needs. So we're trying to come up with the most economical approach.
So it probably would be more of a fence and not a Donald Trump wall. It's going to be a fence that would capture these rocks and stop them from percussing out onto the highway, just like you see on 403.
True, Madam Chair, that would be correct. Something more substantial, and certainly more substantial than a chain link fence. Something a bit more solid to trap the rock or any material that would come down. It could be a combination of the concrete blocks and the fence.
Because the 403 is not a chain link fence; it's heavy cable that will actually stretch itself out because it's a cable roll up that'll slow the rock down and stop it. I'm just curious to know what is that the technology you're looking at, or are you looking at a high concrete wall to block it?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's an option that is being looked at. The wall on the 403 is it certainly has to allow the material. It's going to stretch out when if any rocks come in contact with it, it's going to stretch out. A concrete block wall would be solid and would hopefully remain there. Combination of the two may be something we would look at, but we're looking at the costs of the various ones right now, and we need to make a decision very quickly so we can get the road open again.
So it sounds like the short answer is you don't know yet.
Through you, Madam Chair, not quite yet, but hopefully very soon.
So, thanks.
Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Excellent work, Brian. We're lucky to have you. And you came forward with the initial, you and the Golder Associates came forward through this committee's direction a year and a half ago with an assessment of all our 17 or 18 escarpment passes, if I recall. Claremont was part of that initially. So can I just ask for the record, was there additional engineering studies that you brought in over and above what we started with Golder to assess this Claremont and the decision you've come up with? Madam Chair, through you to Brian, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, the Golder study actually only looked at the rock surfaces. So the 2015 Golder study was not looking at the condition of the bin walls along the Claremont. So just any exposed surface along all of the escarpment crossings. When we had the failure back, when we noticed the failure back in November of 2016, that's when the section of the upper bin wall had failed at the east end. It was hidden behind a lot of trees, so that, at that point we brought in Golder again to do an assessment. But Golder is also doing a study for engineering on the condition of the Claremont Access. So that's a separate study that's proceeding and will be reported back to committee.
Okay, so that's the distinction then, Brian, that Golder was what's exposed the current natural rock face, like the Shermans, like the Kenilworths, but not specifically for the bin wall, and that's what the additional engineering expertise was brought in for. Just to clarify in my mind. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
True, Madam Chair, that would be correct. The Golder, the original Golder one was just rock. Now we're still using Golder. They're a geotechnical consultant with any. It's still dealing with the rock, so that's basically it.
So, Brian, when you say that hopefully by end of February the downbound lanes of the Claremont will be reopened to vehicular traffic, I take it you're going to maintain those Jersey barrier walls that are currently along there, Madam Chair, through you to Brian?
Through you, Madam Chair, the Jersey barrier wall will remain, and there will be an additional barrier closer to the escarpment face to protect us from any additional falls that may occur.
I take it the technology of the day, Brian, long before you and I arrived, but I guess back in the 70s, 40 years and some odd ago, that bin wall, for whatever reasons, there was merit to installing it at the time. I take it we will not be going back. If you can provide professional advice, I take it we will not be going back in that direction to install, if you will, a new one down the road. Madam Chair, through you to Brian.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is the subject of the further study by engineering. I'd hate to try and guess the outcomes. I don't see myself as any expert in that matter, but I know there will be strategies put forward for short, medium and long-term strategies dealing with the wall.
Okay, so then a future bin wall, hypothetically, has not been taken off the table as a possible option permanently moving forward. Madam Chair, through you to Brian, is that what I heard correctly then?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think anything's off the table. I think it would be, we would be relying on our consultants' expertise to, and whoever the consultant would be dealing with this issue. I know the current study is looking at the conditions of the escarpment. There will be further studies dealing with the best strategy and what you're trying to achieve there and protecting the rock face. There's a number of strategies out there. I would hate to be guessing as to what will be recommended.
No, fair enough. I was just saying, I was just reiterating in my interpretation that it's not been taken off the table as a possible future option to reinstall another bin wall. So Brian, with confidence, you and the consultants, both Golder and, by the way, what's the name of the new ones that were brought in? I believe they were brought in from the West Coast, Madam Chair. Through you to Brian.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a contractor that we have from the West Coast. It's BAT Construction from British Columbia, and their contract. We didn't bring them in for this project. They bid on a contract that we put out in 2016 for maintaining our escarpment slopes, and this is a multi-year contract, so that we've engaged them to do the work for us.
So my last two comments, Brian, are that obviously with confidence, with all the professional advice that's being brought to your attention and working with your team, with confidence, fingers crossed, we reopen the downbound lanes of the Claremont for safe vehicular traffic, hopefully with no difficulties whatsoever. Madam Chair, through you to Brian, is that what I'm hearing?
Through you, Madam Chair, that would be correct. We are confident of having the works completed before the end of February.
And lastly, Betty, to the 450,000, at least someone who has 2 escarpment passes in this area, which your team has done a good job the last few years of doing more proactive scaling and putting up additional meshes and Jersey barrier walls. I want to make sure that 450,000 is still in the budget. So do you need any further support from this committee to reinstate that, or you will work that out between yourself and Finance? Madam Chair, through you to Betty.
I think, Madam Chair, I think we've got a plan of action agreed between ourselves and Finance. And Joe, I'm not sure if there's a motion coming forward on that amount on Friday, or how exactly. I think we're still trying to figure out the logistics behind this.
Thanks, Betty. Joe,
yeah,
please.
through the chair, I think the motion would come then at the, would it be the next council meeting? Because I believe for your tender requirements, we can work with purchasing to further this issue along.
Okay, so Joe, without bantering this back and forth, between you and Betty, I'll look forward to that motion, helping council with that motion for Councillor Whitehead, Skelly and myself, especially as mountain councillors with the mountain escarpment passes, and the Claremont between Councillor Whitehead and Skelly's area specifically, and of course Councillor Farr below. That I just don't want staff a few months from now say, you know, Councillor, we lost sight of that 450,000. We won't be able to do the other work that we were planning on doing in the other areas. So I'll leave it with you two to bring that forward at the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to tap into my 11 years in the mining industry, dealing with and all those hard rock, so it's clearly a different type of rock you're dealing with. Certainly, when you're dealing with unstable areas, there was different practices that came to bear to ensure that the miners were held safe when they were doing their work. So, a couple things. One is water is the worst enemy of any exposed rock face in regards to erosion and instability. So the first question I have is, have we done, is it part of the current reporting, a geological, hydrological look at that particular escarpment face, how the water flows, where it flows, and what we can do to mitigate the ongoing damage that the water can do to destabilize that escarpment face?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's not being looked at as part of our works right now. We're looking at just the maintenance of what we see there. We haven't delved into that.
Okay. I guess the question is, that would be part of the long-term strategy?
Through you, Madam Chair, that'll be part of the short and medium and long-term strategy. Any treatment that we go back through there has to take that into account, and you're absolutely correct in terms of the water moving through the escarpment face is paramount of interest to us.
I appreciate, because I know that with the type of technology now they have today, they can do a pretty darn good job mapping out where the vulnerabilities are within the escarpment face as it pertains to water. And the next question is, what do you do and what do you design to route the water so that there's a couple of things. Route the water so that you're not having that impact. And the other side of it is, and I know what we did in the mining industry, is we, can't remember what the product was called, but we in fact had a river, for example, flowing into or leaking into one of the stopes, which obviously would flood the whole mine out. And they used material and jetted up those cracks to basically seal those cracks from the water penetrating into the stopes. So I'm trying to understand where we see water where we don't want it, and we know it's going to destabilize the face. Are we looking at such product to inject into those particular crevices and cracks to ensure that we create a more solid face and ensure that the water isn't continuing to, because water goes to the point of least resistance, doesn't continue destabilizing those areas?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is a consideration. It's a little different when you're drilling a hole down in the ground, and you can keep the water from ingressing when you've got an entire escarpment face and the water's migrating out to the face of it. How do you block it up? How do you reroute it? It's a major challenge. So that has to be one of the considerations with any of the long-term sustainable methods to maintain and or stabilize the escarpment face, but it will be a major challenge.
Appreciate it. And understanding the type of rock we're dealing with, it's a lot easier solutions on hard rock than you're dealing with shale and sediment. Are we looking at rock bolting and screening where they've identified clear faces that they can secure and help secure the soft points?
Through you, Madam Chair, that was one of our options in terms of how we would be protecting traffic on Claremont, was maybe putting in anchors and screen along the face in the areas where the bin walls are being removed. We were looking at the cost of that as well as an option. That's quite an expensive solution, and more than likely we will be looking at the barrier adjacent to the traffic lanes.
Okay. Interested why that would be more costly. Is it the cost of the material, the cost of the work?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe it would be the cost of materials to have the steel draped all over the escarpment. We have used that material extensively around the Claremont Cut, and as we go around the corner onto the Claremont Access, where it is very steep.
I appreciate that. And we're pretty confident then that with the work that you've laid out, that we will have a downbound lane opened by the end of February?
To you, Madam Chair, we're confident in our dealings with our consultant and contractor. We're very confident that that will be done, and as long as the weather will hold up, we should be okay.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Any further questions? May I please have a motion to receive the update respecting repairs to the Claremont Access? Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Ferguson, all those in favour? Carried.